And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another disappointing episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network dedicated to covering Indiana women's basketball. Today is our 104th episode, recorded on Sunday, February 4th, 2024. And I am your host, Kathy Amos, and joined today with my co-host, Jeff Marlow. And today we will be breaking down your number 10, number 9 Indiana Hoosiers loss 74-69 to the number 7 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes. That loss now brings the record to 18-3 overall and 9-2 in the conference. And Jeff, we're going to start out our show as we do every show, and that's with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And it's kind of hard for me to come up with one, but I'm going to go to, and I don't have the exact time marked down, but I'm going to go to sometime in that second quarter where Mackenzie Holmes got one of her rebounds that she had today, 9 in total for the day, but she got her one of her rebounds that actually moved her into 5th place all time in leading rebounds for the entire program of Indiana women's basketball. She now has 930 rebounds on her career. So she could really try to knock the door there for those 1,000 rebounds. It may be tough to get to, but I think, she keeps hustling on the boards like she did today. I think that's something we might be seeing later this year. And, it was hard in a game like we had today where we really had a tale of two halves, right? We came out and we were really strong in that second quarter in particular. We were a little off in that first quarter, really dialed in the second quarter, and it was some of the best basketball we've seen. And then you contrast that with what I'm sure we'll get into quite a bit, which is the third quarter, which in my opinion, I think was one of the worst quarters we've seen from this team. And then they came back and tried to bounce back here, but it was a little too late in that fourth quarter for them to really end up making it in. But they definitely made it interesting down the run. But, again, our banner moment is just another highlight for Mackenzie Holmes, I think, and another notch in her belt of something that we've seen from her for now almost 5 full seasons from Mackenzie. And again, just continues to give us some joy in our basketball, even if it was a loss today. And our banner moment is brought to you by Home Field Apparel, the presenting sponsor of the Back Home Network, who includes the Assembly Call and Crimson Cast. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools or updating their products for schools in their existing line, so you're bound to find something for you or anyone in your life that just loves great collegiate gear. Not only do you get great quality apparel, but you are supporting an Indiana-based business that has its roots in the Kelly School business. So go to homefieldapparel.com, and if it's your first time shopping with them, you can use our promo code HOME23 to get 15% off your entire first order. Again, that promo code is HOME23 for 15% off, and the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right. Well, now we're going to kick it over to Jeff for your Marlow's musing. So, Jeff, what's on your mind today?
Okay, Kathy, I'll agree with you. I think the third quarter we're going to talk a lot about. But again, we pegged this. I think both of us, excuse me, I feel a sneeze coming on. I think we both felt like this was going to be a loss in the preseason. That this was, again, we've said this all along, that Ohio State is perhaps on paper the best team in the league. And when they can get their pressure going, especially, they can get teams rattled. So you look at what they've done. They've beaten Iowa in Columbus. They've beaten us in Columbus. Now, they still have to go back to Iowa City. They don't come back to Bloomington. So this game became important a little bit because you get into some tie scenarios for seeding of the Big Ten tournament. But at least I think compared to a couple of the other high-profile games at Iowa City, at Stanford, we saw this team compete better. When the run happened, they didn't just shrink and let it get away into a 25, 30-point blowout like they kind of did in those first two games that I'm talking about at Stanford and Iowa City. So the loss here, at least while there were some things with it that are discouraging, that you saw some fight in them. And again, you got to remember, we picked this to be a loss thinking we'd have a healthy roster, that Sydney would be healthy and with that. So then you were going into a situation now on the road without an all-league caliber player and somebody who, as a senior, you would like to think could help settle some of the issues down with the pressure. I think that's the thing that's got most fans are going to look at and be like, wow, we still struggled with the press. And again, Ohio State's going to make a lot of people look bad on their press, But I guess my concern, and I think I tweeted or I texted this with a friend, and I was maybe in our group message, that I just not sure what the scheme is. And we've said this a couple times against pressure teams, and we're going to see this Thursday night. Michigan State's going to play a similar style. I'm just not sure what the scheme is that they're trying to run, because I don't see anybody consistently getting the middle. It looks like they want to try and get it on a sideline and see if they can go over the top diagonally, which again is fine, but it usually helps if you can get somebody in the middle to occupy somebody. But there were too many times today where when Ohio State was pressing us, they got us down inside, basically our own free throw line, and just kind of had us all bottled up or got us into the corner. And that's the worst place you want to, be against the pressure. So again, I think that's where most fans are probably going to be looking at the result today. Like, wow, we still couldn't handle the press. And that is a concern going forward as we play them in the Big Ten tournament and other teams similar to that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jeff. And with the scheme, that's the one thing I was just not quite understanding. I was hoping, we can get into it here a little more detail, but something maybe later you can address as a coach. What I don't understand personally is I didn't understand why we seem to be trying to attack the press by going to the sidelines. There was multiple times that we seemed to get the ball in the corner, or that we were moving backwards instead of trying to move across the half court line. And I was really confused. And it seemed to me that that's what the coaches were coaching the players to do, because they didn't just do it once and then or twice or just one player doing it. It was multiple times where I thought we got it into that corner or on the sidelines, and it really just gave Ohio State an extra defender when you get it that close. And so I thought maybe we should have attacked the ball, the middle more in that press. But, overall, I think it was confusing to me. So when we get to our pivotal plays and start talking more about that third quarter, I'd like to get your perspective on it too. So with that, Jeff, let's go ahead and move into the pivotal plays. And since I'm hosting, why don't you give us a start here? Is there anything, at the beginning of the game that seemed pretty pivotal to you that you want to talk about?
Yeah, let's go about the first 5 minutes. It kind of was, I felt like, to use some boxing terminology here, they were kind of feeling each other out. Both teams were kind of doing a little dancing around the ring. They were, trying to see if they could land a jab here, jab there. It was really kind of, what they could find, because got off to a little slow start. First time out, was 7-6, and Mac had all 7 points for us. And so I thought that was kind of a pivotal point there. And then, you came out of that timeout, and Ohio State kind of made an adjustment, and they really kind of were the first to kind of stay with the boxing analogy that just really, they landed that first really hard punch, coming out of that timeout there at the quarter, in the first quarter media timeout.
Yeah. Matt came out really on fire. Like you mentioned, she had, her first 7 points, and then they really seemed to make some good adjustments. Ohio State did. And she ended up with only 14 on the day. So half her points came really early on in that first quarter. And then they kind of shut her down. She was not nearly as efficient as what we've seen from Mackenzie in the past as well. So, I thought there was a couple, really hard fought quarter in that first quarter. One place that I thought might end up being potentially pivotal was right around the 3-minute mark, where Lexi got her third foul. And I think today Lexi really was a person we needed in there, not for her scoring ability per se, but because of her ball handling. I thought, with the turnover bug really hitting the team hard again in this game, Lexi was one of the starters who didn't turn it over. And with all the ball handling she had, I thought that was actually pretty good from her. But she got that second foul with 3 minutes to go, and I was a little concerned. But she ended up really, what did she end up playing? Quite a bit for us. I think she had, 30 minutes, and she did end up with only 2 turnovers, and just one more foul after those first 3 minutes. And so that ended up actually not being a pivotal play, but I wrote that down because I was a little concerned we weren't going to be able to use her as much. But the other thing I think in the first quarter was a little bit of a hint of what we were going to see really rear its head, where they had 6 turnovers in that first quarter alone. So I wrote that down. It wasn't just one play per se as a pivotal play, but I thought that was a kind of a foreshadowing of what we ended up seeing really bad in the third quarter.
Yeah, and I'll just
any other first quarter pivotal plays that you want to talk about?
Oh, I'm sorry, Kathy. I thought you had a little lag there. No, I really don't have anything else in the first quarter. I'll just go
Yeah.
ahead and jump into the second quarter. And again, kind of a back and forth quarter. They had that 18-11 lead because they made a big run there at the end of the first quarter and got it to 18-11. And then we kind of battled back into it about 22-18. And then a big play, and I don't have the exact time on this, but there was a play there where I believe it was Cody McMahon got fouled, made the bucket, and put it up to 24-18, and Terry Morin took a timeout. And I thought that timeout was a well executed timeout, because you could just tell they still weren't quite where they should be in terms, especially defensively, as they were coming through. And Coach Morin took that timeout. Now she hit the free throw, so it actually went to 25-18. But from there on, really, we dominated the rest of that second quarter. But I thought the timeout because I had a feeling, because we were going back and forth about this, Kathy, in our text a little bit. And I had another friend. Yarden was not very good in the first quarter and a half. She was not, and so there's no other way to say it. But then she played a lot better in that segment. And I'm not saying that she did, but man, you just kind of got to wonder whether Coach Morin really lit in not only her to the whole team, but did she really get into Yarden about, hey, it's time to get going? And because I thought Yarden had a really good second half of that second quarter. And to me, that was, I don't have a time on that, but that to me, that whole thing becomes really pivotal.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, that was one of the pivotal plays I wrote down. Again, I don't have the exact time, but I think it was right around that time we took that timeout. Right after it, not too long, where we finally actually did attack the middle of the press, and we got the ball down to Mac, who then got the ball over to Garzone, who attacked the lane and got fouled, and we made it 23-25, and that was was good because we really needed that after the end of the first quarter into the second quarter. Ohio State was on a 10-0 run, and Sarah Scalia finally ended that with a layup. But I thought that was what I wanted to see more, was on the press, was when they were going to the middle and really attacking it and making crisp passes, not these lob passes that we saw a lot, not trying to necessarily dribble out of the double team. I don't know about others, but I feel like us passing the ball is going to be quicker than what Ohio State is going to be able to run. And so I felt like we needed to pass it. And with that play, where we ended up getting it to Mac and to Garzon, it looked like we were handling the press fine at that point in the second quarter. So I agree. I think that timeout was really indicative of what we needed to see in a good coaching adjustment. Anything else in the second quarter you want to talk about? Because I do think that was some of the best basketball we've seen from this team. It was just this weird roller coaster today of different games I felt within the game. And that second quarter was one I wish we saw more of.
Well, and so you finished that quarter on a 19-8 run. So like you talked about, go back to, it was 7-6 at the timeout. The first quarter media timeout was 7-6, and then you go to the timeout that Terry Morin takes. So now that's my math's always a little fuzzy, but that's an 18-11 run by Ohio State, and then we go on a 19-8 run to finish. So you had a game of runs, and that's kind of what I was expecting coming into this game. If we were going to be competitive, you had, they're going to make a run. They're going to make a run. Yeah, it just was one of those things. And so I felt pretty good going in at halftime, up 37-32. But I Kathy, you go back to the third quarter. I'm going to jump ahead to the third quarter here, but it's just like, this is where I put this in the Discord. And for those of you who are watching or follow along with us in the Discord, very first possession, we turn it over on the press, and it wasn't even like we were trying to throw it anywhere. We just almost literally kind of threw it sideways and got kind of over on the sideline with that. And so that kind of really set the tone for that first half of that third quarter. I felt like we just really struggled. We had one play, I don't have the exact time, but they were pressing us, and Yarden saw Lene Beaumont, and she was open. That diagonal was open, but she airmailed it, and basically Lene tried to save it, but it went right to Ohio State for another turnover. So there was about a 5-minute stretch there, 4.5 stretch there, where we just really struggled with the press, and Ohio State took advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the first two times you mentioned, the first one where Chloe threw the ball away and then Ohio State scored. And then the next time Lexi dribbles it to the corner and loses the ball right after that. And again, why are we dribbling the ball to the corner? I did not understand that at all. it was really confusing to me. And I see Ari in the chat said that during the post-game press conference that Coach Morin did come out, at least during the press conference, and she took responsibility as the head coach and said, I just didn't prepare them properly for breaking that press. And to me, that was a great example of it. Those two back to back. I didn't quite understand it. I thought Chloe was really struggling with it today. She was doing a lot of, I thought, just kind of lackadaisical almost passes, like more lob passes. They weren't crisp. And we've kind of seen that from her a couple times, when Princeton pressed us. And then last week when Maryland was pressing us, we see these high arching passes from Chloe, and it got picked up a number of times, and she ended up, I think, with 5 turnovers today. And those were two very, I think, indicative examples of what was going wrong for us against that press. And Jeff, you mentioned too, I think in the Discord, maybe you can talk on this a little bit right now. Ohio State did change their press. That was different from the first quarter, or the first half rather, right? We seem to be handling it fine in the second quarter. They went into halftime, they changed it, and they came out into a different press. So maybe for our listeners, you can talk a little bit more about what their press was like in the first quarter or first half and what it was like in the second.
Yeah, in the first half, you heard, if you were watching the game and got a chance to watch it, and you watch on the FS1 where they came into the timeout there a little bit, and Kevin McGuff, a couple things, I put this in the Discord as well, that Kevin McGuff was correct. He told them, he was telling the Ohio State players, keep running, keep pushing, and because they'll get tired, because he knew we were going to play but our starters quite a bit, and he believed that they were going to be able to just wear us down. But he also talked about how he stay in their 22 and keep pressing them, keep running them, especially if they stay in 22, and 22 means 2-2-1 pressure. Everybody has a different way of calling their stuff. Mine was kind of similar. When I use that press, we would refer to it as 25, but 25 meaning 20, 2-2-1 on the front, and then 5 meaning man and man in the backcourt or in the half court. And that's what they were doing. But that all that means is you got 2 guards up front, and 2 players up front, 2 roughly around half court, 1 all the way back to protect. And generally you're going to allow that to be inbounded, and then you're going to try and really press. And the problem with what we're trying to do, Kathy, a little bit is, especially on 2-2-1, really kind of trying to force you sideline anyway. So we kind of were taking the bait a little bit, because they're trying to get you to go sideline and almost really want you to throw the pass just ahead of half court, where now they can trap you and you can't go back, and they got you on that sideline. So you really don't have, and we saw that a couple times in the first half too, where we did get across half court. But with that, now what's open against that, if you run somebody to the middle or sometimes we would just set, somebody, and I mentioned this, I think in the group or maybe the Discord, I've had about 3 different conversations going on with different things, but I'm not sure you just don't put against Ohio State. You just don't put McKenzie in the middle of it and use her size
over the top. Yeah.
Throw over the top. And because if you get it past the front line of any press, you at least relieve the pressure. Now, I don't expect Mac to turn and dribble and go, to the other end and lead the break, but you at least relieve that pressure and force it back beyond, kind of back behind half court. With that, so that 2-2-1 pressure, but then if you put somebody in the middle, it forces the 2-2-1 to cover it, usually with the backside person from half court, and that's where the diagonal is open, and that's what they were trying to hit. Then in the second half, and I saw JC Sheldon give the signal, and it looked like a diamond, like if you form up like a diamond with your fingers, and that's what we referred to it as. We used to refer to it as 15, but that diamond meaning you're putting somebody right up on the ball. And that's where they really got us in the third quarter, because when you put somebody on the ball and you're putting the 2 people at the free throw line, then somebody basically around half court and somebody all the way back, what you're trying to do is force it to a side. You're trying, what we taught that front person was you force it, try to force it short side or at the very middle, force it such a flat pass that it forces it into a corner. And that's what they were doing a pretty good job of with that. So that's the difference, is really to the 2 presses. But you both, in my opinion, and I agree with you, and I put this in the Discord, I was having conversations with others, I'm a big believer you beat the press by getting the ball to the middle. And I didn't understand and the other thing is, your inbounder, if you're not going to like flash them to the middle, because that's one thing you can do. You have your inbounder inbound it, then flash middle and stay there. But the inbounder, somebody's got to get behind the ball. So if you pass it in, let's say to Lexi over toward that corner, somebody's your guy. The inbounder has to stay behind it because you want that angle back and to leave some pressure, or somebody has to rotate back. But we were throwing a lot of flat passes across or just like you said, some, kind of a lot of air under passes that just were kind of up in the air way too long. But I'm just a big believer that you beat press by getting the ball to the middle. And because because every coach teaches their press defense, keep the ball out of the middle. Why? Because they know that's where it beats the press. So, but that's, again, I know Coach Morin did a great, and I give kudos to Coach Morin for coming in the press conference and saying she didn't have them prepared. That's a good coaching move. Now, I got a lot of suspicion she's going to go into the film room tomorrow and be like, we talked about this in walkthrough. We talked about it in practice on Friday. Why didn't we execute it? And because, again, this is the second time now where their press has really, it went back to the Big Ten tournament last year. Again, they're good. They're good. Don't get me wrong. They've got athletes, and I'm going to talk. We get to the notable numbers here in a few minutes. Yeah. I'm going to talk about one of their players a little bit as well, because I mean, they're some of the numbers there, but that's what we're talking about. And I saw JC Sheldon give that signal, that diamond, and that's what that's kind of what we used to do with our hands, and we just put that like diamond or however you want to put it, and so. You could see they were changing. Then they changed it back to the 2-2-1 after Indiana started to look like they had figured it out. Look like, oh crap, they changed it. Then they went back to the 2-2-1. So good job by Kevin McGuff to kind of keep them on their toes a little bit. But that may be where, again, I'm not trying to be down on Chloe, but that's, in this case, Chloe's the point guard. She's got to be one to recognize some of that. And I just. Again, another game. I'm not trying to find an excuse, but having Sydney Parrish on the floor in a game like this on the road would have been a big key.
Yeah, I agree. I think the player you might be referring to, Ohio State, at least one of them, is Cody McMahon. And that was a play I was also a little surprised about in the third quarter. She got her third foul with 8 minutes left into that third quarter. And I thought, well, this might turn out to be good for us, but we just couldn't seem to keep from turning the ball over. So we could never get anything going offensively to try to even, force her into that fourth foul, because they left her out there on the court. And she played, and I think she ended up with 20 points before she ended up finally fouling out, late in the fourth quarter. So I was hoping, that might be a pivotal point for us in that third quarter. And it just turned out not to be, because we just couldn't get anything going again. I kind of quit writing down pivotal plays in that third quarter because they started being all turnovers, right? Like, oh, we had another turnover by Yarden, and then Lexi stops a fast break, which was really fantastic because other people had given up on that play. Like, you see Chloe in particular standing there watching it. Yarden throws a bad pass. Chloe standing there watching it, assumed it was going to go out of bounds. Yeah, it was a terrible pass. And I guess Chloe assumed it was going to go out of bounds. So she just stood there and watched. And Sheldon saved the ball. And she got it down. And but Lexi didn't, and kudos to Lexi for not giving up on that. She stopped that fast break. But then we come down, we turn the ball over again right on the other end. We just couldn't string it together in that third quarter.
And JC Sheldon's who I want to talk about, because and I put it in the Discord, I put it in the text.
She's good.
But we get to some of the numbers. I mean, she's an all Big Ten player, but she was out hustling us. And that would have been one of the things I would in that huddle or in the locker room talking about, or in the film room tomorrow. I was like, that's the part that might be, I hate to say unacceptable, but you can't have JC Sheldon out hustle, because she did it earlier. Mac had the ball down in the block, it kind of got stripped away, and then they all kind of watched it roll toward the corner like it was just going to go out of bounds. But JC Sheldon runs over and grabs it, and they get out of the corner and go the other way. You can't have, especially the other team's best player. I mean, I know you can make a debate about whether it's Cody McMahon or JC Sheldon. I'll go with JC Sheldon as their best player right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think she's the overall rounded player for them and clearly the leader for them. Yeah.
Now, career-wise, McMahon may end up with some better numbers and things like that. But I'm just saying, for right now, JC Sheldon's the best player on that team. And when the other team's best player's out hustling you, that's a sign that you better try and get that, you got to try and get that fixed. So
and that play I was talking about, I think, is an example of that. JC Sheldon was the one who hustled and got that ball and saved it from going out of bounds. And you saw two of our players. I know one was Chloe, and I can't remember who the second one, I think it was Yarden, who had thrown the pass. They just stood there and watched her. And I was just, and I saw another time Chloe kind of did that on defense sometime in the fourth quarter when we were actually trying to make a run back. She assumed again that Ohio State was shooting a layup, and she just, I think, assumed it was going to go in. So you see her standing there at, half court almost, and Lexi's the one down there trying to fight for the rebound on her own. And so I was just a little overall disappointed a little bit with Chloe today. And a couple of times it just felt like she was kind of lacking some energy and hustle today for us. And to your point, on the other side of it, JC Sheldon in particular she was on her game today. So
Okay.
go ahead, Jeff. You had another play you wanted to talk about.
Well, I'm going to go into the fourth quarter, and per se, and I don't remember the exact moment, but I texted it to you guys, and I put it in the Discord. We played zone. We actually went 2-3 zone and did it for more than one possession as a show. So I can't remember. And I'm not going to say I've watched every game going back to Terry Morin's career here, but I've watched a lot of games since since we started this show. I watched quite a few of the games that were on, I didn't have BTN Plus, but any game I could watch back in the day with Tyra Buss and Amanda Cahill, I don't remember a ton of zone.
Nope.
And so Mac had 4 fouls. So I think there was a little bit of trying to protect her there when we were behind. But again, overall, you would have thought, hey, why are we playing zone against a team that, like with JC Sheldon, that can shoot the three? But Ohio State isn't necessarily a great 3-point shooting team. So it really wasn't a bad. The big girl hurt us from 3 probably more than anybody.
In the first half, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, she ended up with she ended up with 3 for 6 from deep. So I thought that was, I love the move. I mean, at least try something different and see if you can at least maybe get them a little bit rattled. And it did for a few possessions. They kind of were like, they turned it over. They took a quick shot, so that got them kind of like, whoa, they're playing zone. So I thought that I like that. It doesn't mean she's going to do it again, but I loved it today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jeff, we kind of been dancing around some of the numbers, but do you want to, let's touch briefly on the fourth quarter and parlay that into our notable numbers. So, they did try to make a run back on that fourth quarter. At 28 seconds, Yarden hits back-to-back threes. We cut the lead to 4, but they just couldn't, it was too late for that. And kind of on the flip side of, Ohio State pressing, we finally start pressing, but again, it was only with 2-3 minutes left to go. And again, I felt like it just came a little too late. And that's how that fourth quarter felt for me, is that it was just too little too late. It was just a little late in the game for us to be able to make that really good run. We had Mac finding Lexi for a nice wide open backdoor cut to cut it to down to 57-65 and finally get it back to single digits. And then those threes from Yarden, but we just couldn't quite get enough stops strung together in that fourth quarter.
The only thing I'll talk about there is kudos to Yarden. She hit them, but really needed there to be that, I'm not saying him, but she just, again, but those 2 shots made her second half look a lot better in the statistic line. But again, they were 2 plays that were way too late. I can't remember if it was on the first 3, Kathy, or the second 3 by Yarden. I think it was the first one, but we had the ball and we didn't seem to have any sense of urgency. It was like, let's, go. And, or not go, but they got it, I think, to Mac, and it took a few seconds to get to Mac. They kind of passed it around 3 times, got it to Mac, and then she got doubled, I think, and she got it out to Yarden, Yarden didn't really have her feet set, and she just kind of fired it up and it went in because she's a decent shooter. And that's, you can do that when you're a decent shooter. But I was kind of like, where's the urgency? And then I'll go to the end of the game. I'll get your thoughts there. Down 4, coming out of the timeout with 14, 15 seconds to go. You still had time to maybe go quick 2 there. Yeah. And we went, and it looked like we really had it drawn up for a 3, because if you watch the reaction of the coaches on the sideline after Sarah missed, they acted like that was the shot they were looking for. And that's fine. I mean, that's a legit strategy. I just think I would have liked to see us go quick 2 if we could. Maybe we get them to foul, or at the least you get a quick 2, it stops the clock, with that. So, but that's difference in philosophy. I'm not going to hammer on that too much, but I just kind of wanted your thoughts on that.
I was the same way. I think, and I saw, or I think we were talking about it in the Discord with some people. And I said, if we, could just get a quick 2 here right away and then try to get the ball back. And if not, foul right away. But, you get a higher percentage shot when you're, if you could have gotten in. And like you said, they were calling, I thought the officials overall called the game good today, but it was an aggressive game today. And there were a lot of fouls being called. And I didn't think they were bad calls or anything, just a lot of them. So to me, why not try to get the ball in, drive the ball, and maybe even make a 3-point play out of it, the old fashioned way by a 2-and-1. So I'm with you, Jeff. I really expected coming out of that timeout, we were going to see us try to get the ball to Mac or have somebody try to drive the ball and not kick it out to Sarah on the edge. So,
and she didn't really get her feet set.
No.
And again, Sarah's a good shooter. She doesn't have to, but in a situation like that, the more you can, the better opportunity, the better chance that you have.
Exactly. All right, cool. Any other pivotal plays for you?
No, let's move on to the numbers.
Let's do it. You go first.
Yeah, 23. Just too many turnovers.
Easy.
Season high 23 turnovers. You mentioned it here in the pivotal plays. We had 6 in the first quarter. We had only 10 at the half. But then the third quarter just really we really bottomed out on turnovers. But any chance you had, even with a healthy Sidney Parrish, let alone an unavailable Sidney Parrish, is predicated on the idea that you are going to limit turnovers. The recipe for being a top 10 team on the road is not turning it over 23 times. And again, I'm not blaming this all on Coach Moore. The players make the plays. They throw it, they travel, whatever it may do. But that's the one I'm sure they're going to really talk a lot about in the film session tomorrow. But 23, we got to start there. The 23 turnovers.
Yeah, and you take the 23, and that leads you right to the other number, which is 21, which is the points Ohio State scored off of those turnovers, and that compared to ours of only 4 points off of turnovers. And it was a lot of people, but 6 from Yardinger zone to lead the team in turnovers. Then you had 5 each from Chloe and Mackenzie. Our 2 seniors in particular having 10 of our 23 turnovers. You just can't happen. And they weren't all against the press. There was a good chunk of them. But there were at least, 3 or 4 travels that we saw as well. So just overall, it was just a sloppy play. In that third quarter, obviously, that was the worst. They had 11 turnovers in that quarter and only 10 points. So, that I think sums up the game enough of why they win this. And I think for me, Jeff, that's kind of why I was, even though I was expecting this to be a loss, why I ended up being a little disappointed today, because we had this game. Mm-hmm. It was a winnable game, and we just came out and did not execute in that third quarter. And it just really had the game get away from us. Yeah. But for me, a number I'm going to jump to next, I'm going to switch to the positive side, is rebounding. So we did out rebound Ohio State 38-29. So, Ohio State clearly wasn't, again, too interested in rebounding the ball a whole lot, I didn't think. And I think we saw that in their numbers when we highlighted that coming into this game. But I did look on the way down to drive to Indiana that we were making on Friday, and Indiana's rebounding margin has been, slowly creeping up. And so we're moving up better on that. And so I think that is something the team has definitely been focusing on. And I think we've been doing a much better job of that. But any overall thoughts from you on the rebounding side today?
Yeah, they only had, we limited them to 4 offensive rebounds, but they don't send a ton of people to the glass. And they're basically a jump shooting team outside really of the steals that they get, the turnovers that they force that they can get runouts on, or 2-on-1 type things where you get layups. It's really a jump shooting team. They really are. And outside McMahon will do some things off the dribble, but it's really kind of a jump shooting team. So they're not sending a lot of people to glass. Kevin McGuff's philosophy, like a lot of coaches, I'm going to make sure I get back. I can go after the rebound, but if I don't get it, I might be opening up a layup on the other end. There are a lot of, especially at the college level, and you're seeing more and more high school coaches with that philosophy, which I know a lot of fans will be like, hey, you send people to glass. Well, there's, Bob Knight used to talk a little bit about it's risk reward, and you can get an offensive rebound, but realistically, your percentage of getting an offensive rebound against a pretty good team is not going to be very high. So you might as well just get back and play and make sure you're not giving up layups at the other end, because somebody goes for a rebound, trips, falls, whatever it may happen. And now it's 5-on-4, 4-on-3 the other way. So I thought the rebounding was really good today. I'm going to go to, and I'm not trying to make this be a negative. You talked about the points off turnovers. You can look at it a couple ways with that. They either averaged basically a point for every turnover, like per possession. So 21 points on 23 turnovers. But if you look at their steals, they averaged over 2 points per steal. So you figure, steals lead to turnovers, lead to a lot of those, points off turnovers. That's, 2 points per steal. That's a high number, but I'm going to go to this number. I'm going to stay in the 20s here. I'm going to go to 20 points. That's the points JC Sheldon had in the second half. She had 5 points at the half. I put that in the Discord, and I was worried about that a little bit. Not that I expected her to get 20, but JC Sheldon's an all-league player. And darn well at halftime, they talked about a few things. And one of the things that probably got brought up was that JC hadn't done a whole lot. She had a couple fouls, and so I think that took away some of her aggressiveness, but she came out and I think she had the first 5 points for Ohio State in the second half. And like I said, she had 20 in the second half, and then they're smart. And I would, I do the same thing. Coach Warren does the same thing. when it got tight, they were putting the ball as much as they could in JC Sheldon's hands because she's going to go to the line and knock down at about an 80% or more rate.
88. Yeah. She was an 88% free throw shooter. So something like 4th in the Big Ten. Yeah.
Yeah. So JC Sheldon played like an all-league player today.
Yeah, she absolutely did. And then you had Cody McMahon. I thought she came out in that second half too and was a lot more aggressive. And she ended up with 20 points. And she only ended up playing 30 minutes because of some of the fouls that she didn't get called on. So I think we just struggle again with Cody McMahon in particular, where she could just drive and do whatever she wants. We have a really hard time with those, straight line drives and being able to stop them. And, we tried a couple of different people on her and it just seemed like we weren't going to be able to kind of stop her from getting it. Now, to be fair, a lot of teams have struggled with Cody McMahon and being able to stop her here, especially of late. She's really come on in her sophomore year here. So really making a big sophomore jump.
And part of that's her physical size and strength. And that's probably one I would be interested. Is that somebody that Sid would have been guarding? Is that somebody that Sydney would have been guarding if she's healthy from that standpoint? So, yeah, but you're right. Cody McMahon's a tough task for a lot of teams. And you said that. So, but I jumped in there. So you got it. What you got? Any other notable numbers you got?
Yeah, I think the other interesting one for me is 0 to 2. Which is bench points. I was really thinking that we'd see a little bit more not from our bench, from Ohio State's bench, but they really rode their starters most of this game as well, and we did too. And that led into Sarah Scalia and Chloe Moore McNeil playing 38 minutes each, and Garzon playing 37 minutes each. So not a lot of rest for 3 of our main starters, and Mackenzie 33 minutes and Lexi with 31. So again, not surprising. Pretty short bench for us today. But they did have Ricky Harris that came in for Ohio State. She didn't score as much as I was thinking. And she ended up playing 22 minutes for them off their bench. So again, not surprising, especially with Sydney being out. Our bench was short to begin with. And now Lexi being thrust into that, kind of starter role with starter minutes. Not surprised. And I thought Lene had some nice minutes too for us with her 13 was okay. Jules at the beginning came in pretty early but ended up only playing 3 minutes. And I thought we saw a little bit from Lily too, but just again, not a whole lot from our bench today. Again, not surprising that it was pretty short in this game.
Yeah. And I will go to this number real quick to kind of finish it up from my perspective on noble numbers. Percentage wise, you didn't feel too bad. 37, let's call it 38%. I'll round it up on threes. You can live with that, but they were only 6 for 16. And part of that's turnovers. All right. And part of that, I think that they were, again, we talked about this in our group chat, and Ohio State has not changed the way they're basically guarding. Now they doubled a little bit more today, but they're basically going to guard Mac one-on-one. And if Mac plays well, she's going to get her 25 or 30, but they're going to try and really limit the number of open jump shots. And I thought they did a pretty good job of that today. And that's one of the reasons that the numbers are down a little bit, only 16 threes. But also, again, and this isn't trying to be negative, it's just, it is a reality, is they weren't even guarding Lexi on the 3-point line. If you watched when Lexi was and when she had the ball above outside of the 3-point line, her defender, whoever it was, and a lot of times it was Cody McMahon once she got into foul trouble, she was backing off 5-6 feet. And I get it. Lexi's not shooting that 3 on a regular basis. But that's, again, now if you have Sydney, again, if we play them in the Big Ten tournament and can solve the press problems a little bit, now Sydney's a shooter and they can't. And now that opens up more space for Mac, because McMahon was the one a lot of times digging on Mac in the post. They did make a slight adjustment there, but that was all basically because they were going to dare Lexi to shoot it from 3.
Yeah, absolutely. We should at least point out, we've been talking about Lexi's shooting form. It clearly is something I think they're working on for her with her free throws. And we saw that today. If you were able to watch the game or the next game when she does get to the free throw line. By the way, she's shooting 40% from the free throw line this year. So clearly something she needs to work on. But it looked like she was almost... Yeah, she wasn't much better today, I don't think, was she?
No, she was 2 for 3.
2 for 3. Yeah, so better. So she's making improvements. There we go. But yeah, I mean, she definitely looked like she was doing almost like what you used to do when you're young, doing shooting drills, where you're just taking one arm, you're getting it set, and then you finally put your other hand up to the ball. And hopefully that's working for her. And it's a nice adjustment to be able to see that in season from her. And then hopefully then that will kind of parlay to her in the off season, where she can work on that and not just in free throws, but then be able to rectify whatever's going on with her jump shot as well. So at least, trying to make some progress there for her in season. I thought that was nice to see from Lexi.
Yep.
Any other notable numbers, Jeff? I don't think I had anything else.
I don't.
All right. Well, let's move over to game ball then. So at the bottom of the screen there, you can see Mackenzie Holmes is leading the way with 9, Sarah Scalia with 4, Sydney Parrish with 3, Yarden Garzone with 3, and Chloe Moore McNeil with 1. So, Jeff, how about for you? Do you have your vote for game ball today?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Sarah here. I mean, Sarah, basically in the second half, she was, for the most part, especially for a big chunk of the second half, she was the only offense. She finished with 25 points, 8 of 17 shooting, 3 for 8 from beyond the arc, 6 of 7 at the free throw line. But she did also have 4 rebounds. She had an assist. She had a steal. Now, everybody had turnovers, but she only had 3. So I'm going to go with Sarah here in 38 minutes. So.
Yep. I'll make that unanimous. I think that was pretty easy, and again, it wasn't just Sarah shooting 3-pointers for us today. I think it's something we've talked about all year with her. She's become a much more rounded offensive player, and she's improved on the defensive side as well. So, she was 8 of 17 in total field goals, and only three today from 3-point line. And she was 6 of 7 from the line. I thought was really nice. So yeah, for me, that was an easy one to give Sarah the game ball. Well, let's jump over to the Grace Berger Hardest Worker Award then. So again, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the scroll at the bottom of the screen there with our run total for the year. So Sydney Parrish is leading the way right now, still with 5, Mackenzie Holmes with 4, Chloe Moore McNeil with 3, Lexi Bargesser with 3, Sarah Scalia with 2, Lene Beaumont with 2, and Lily Meiser with 1. So that's kind of nice to be able to rattle off that many names. But Jeff, who do you have for your hardest worker today?
Well, we talked a little bit about this on pregame or the pre-show before we actually went live. First thing I said was I'm not sure who I was going to go with because I have a hard time giving it to somebody who had 5-6 turnovers. I'm not sure that's the hustle award. So I'm going to go with Lexi. She only had 6 points, but she had 4 rebounds. She had an assist. She had 2 steals. And overall, like you mentioned, and talk about hustle. She was the one hustling back on that play that you mentioned earlier where JC Sheldon had pitched it, saved it, and they were out for going for a layup. And not only did she hustle back, she got able to get swiped down on it, get a hand on it, went off the Ohio State player's leg, and we got the ball back. So to me, that's kind of where the hustle award comes in here. I'm going to go with Lexi Bargesser.
Yeah, I'm going to make this one unanimous too, Jeff. Like you said before we started, we weren't quite sure, but as we kept talking through the game and I was looking at all the notable pivotal plays rather that I had kind of typed in and you had typed in, Lexi's name kept popping up, didn't it? And it's again, not things that you're going to see in the stacks, like you were mentioning that play again, where, she was the only one that hustled, stopped that fast break. And, she was hustling for that rebound. And that's exactly what you want from your hardest worker. So to me, I thought Lexi played a nice game. Again, only 2 turnovers with as much as she was handling the ball against that press. Very, very good to see. And it's very encouraging for her and her future too. So while again, we never want anyone hurt and we certainly want Sydney back soon, in terms of Lexi's development, I think we're really seeing a lot of growth really quick from her in this short amount of time with her taking on a lot more minutes with Sydney being out. So congratulations to Lexi. That's now her 4th hardest worker award for this year. So we haven't talked a whole lot about Mackenzie Holmes today. I don't think this was anything we would say this was her best game, but I do think that Ohio State really kind of game planned for her pretty well. And again, like you mentioned, being able to sag off of Lexi and Cody McMahon going down and kind of helping. I think she, wasn't quite as efficient today, not per se, because I think Mackenzie had a bad game per se, 6 of 12 from the from the field. I thought Ohio State actually did a pretty good job on her, but let's update her numbers. So today she ended up with 14 points on 6 made field goals, 9 rebounds, and 1 block. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, this was her 900. She's now got 930 rebounds, putting her in 5th place. In case you're wondering, for 4th in rebounding, she's 970, which means she would need to have average of about 6 rebounds per game in the regular season to get 40 more to move into fourth. But point-wise, with her 14 points to game, she now has 2,320 points, and she needs 44 more points to take over Tyra Buss. So again, if we're wanting her to do that at home against Purdue, that would mean she'd need to average 22 points in those next 2 games. So that is where we are with the MAC watch. So Jeff, anything else about this game you want to talk about, or should we start previewing our next game?
No, but I put this out on, only thing I'll say is I put this out on the tweet, on the Doing the Work Twitter feed, or X, whatever we're supposed to call it now.
Yeah.
But a loss today isn't the end of the world. I think what is the issue is a second time now against Ohio State, where we didn't seem to really have any answers for their press. Because in the past, we really have torched the press. You go back to the regular season games last year, the games before the year before, we had really kind of torched their press, and really, a couple of those games were 25, 30-point wins over Ohio State. So, again, didn't think in preseason prognostication, I thought this was going to be the other loss they had in the Big Ten. On the road. I thought and kind of the one where it kind of is getting me worried a little bit now, not that we'll talk about Michigan State here in a few minutes, but Illinois starting to play just well enough to worry me a little bit about that game in Champaign. But again, you hold court at home, and that means you beat Iowa. So now, we'll see what shakes out there. But no, I not the end of the world. It's just the fact that the pressure bothered us again for the second straight game.
Right. And we knew it was coming. And I kind of had mentioned this before, like when we played Princeton and they came out and pressed in the second half, we seemed a bit rattled by it then. And then I think when we had Maryland last week, when they were doing a bit of a press too, and we knew the press today was coming, and we knew it was going to be a lot more aggressive. So hopefully the coaching staff can go back, look at the film and come up with a better plan in case we see another team that is aggressively pressing. So, well, cool. Well, let's move on to our upcoming game. So as Jeff mentioned, we will be playing Michigan State next. This will be a home game. It will be on Thursday, February 8th. Tip-off is at 7 Eastern or 6 Central, and it will be on Peacock. So Michigan State, I'll talk a little bit about some of their overall, what they're doing so far this year, and I'll kick it over to you, Jeff, for some more analysis there. So currently, right now, they are number 20 in the net. Michigan State leads the all-time series 48-32. And we are 17-21 at home against the Spartans. So historically, Michigan State's kind of had our number here, but Indiana did win the last matchup. That was last year in the Big Ten tournament. We won that 94-85. That was a very aggressive game. That's where McKenzie kind of re-injured that knee, I think, leading into the end of the postseason. So we'll see what we kind of get with them. But last year in the regular season, we did lose in East Lansing on December 29th, 78-83. That's when we were missing Grace Berger. So that was the game that we really felt like we missed them. That was our only regular season matchup. So in terms of team stats, they are 16-5 overall and 6-4 in the conference. They did beat Miami. That's one of the really good wins, but they've been really close in some of their losses. So they went into Iowa and only lost by 3. That game, if I remember, went into overtime. And then they only lost to Ohio State by 5. So, they're definitely were right on the cusp of beating a couple of those really top teams as well, too. Offensively, they put up a lot of points. They're third in the Big Ten with 86.5 points per game. Defensively, they're 7th and allow around 66.5 points per game. As a team, they're shooting 48%, which is 4th in the league, and they're allowing opponents 42%, which is 11th. 3-point shooting, they shoot 36% for 3 points at 5th, and then they allow their opponent to shoot 32.7, which is 11th in the league. They're an okay average free throw shooting team at 74.7, which is 6th in the league. And then rebounding, they have a 2.1 margin at 9th. And then interesting, their turnover margin, though, is 1st in the league at 7.6, where they are only turning the ball over 11 and but forcing around 18.6 turnovers per game. So that might be a storyline we'll have to keep an eye on Thursday. But Jeff, do you want to take us through like the coaches and some of their top players to watch?
Yeah, and this is a team that really kind of got retooled over the summer. They lost some players. They go back to that Big Ten tournament game. They had some players last year. Just at that point, they just in that Big Ten tournament game, they just put their head down, and went to the rim, and we really struggled to guard that. And that was kind of when we first really started to see some. We'd seen some instances of that last year where we were struggling to guard off the bounce. I know in previous seasons, but Michigan State last year in that Big Ten tournament game was just like put their head down and we're going. Yep. With that, they are deep. I go back to that game in Iowa City, Kathy. I could be wrong, but I think it was a Caitlin Clark buzzer beater at the end of regulation.
Right. Okay, yes, that's right. That's right. You're right.
I think we all thought it was going overtime.
Yes.
And such, but I could be wrong. It might have been a buzzer beater at overtime, but Caitlin Clark beat them at the buzzer. We kind of have understand that feeling. But then they'll lose a game here or there that makes you scratch your head. It's like, well, and part of that I think is because they're still maybe not as talented as some of the other teams in the league. With that, they are deep. They're going to run. You talk about rebound margin, but then you also talk about turnover margin. They're going to press. They're going to play up tempo, and with that, and that's surprising that the few turnovers they have on offense, considering they like to get up and down the floor and shoot it. So, well, it's going to be a game that'll challenge us, especially. And again, I don't think we'll see Sid on Thursday. It'd be nice if we did. It was great news for those of you. We didn't say this at the beginning.
Yeah, that might be in our moment.
Maybe Sydney was seen today at the game only in a boot. She did not have any crutches to help her get around. So, in my view, kind of former coach / fan more than anything, that would lead me to believe that she may be a little around a week out. Maybe a little longer, maybe a little less. Just depends. But I think we'll see her by the time we, for the Purdue game. If we do, that'd be good. What got alarming earlier today was Lexi Bargesser was seen in a boot, and everybody's like, well, getting off the bus is like, whoa. But I think that was a little bit more precautionary because obviously she played, and we saw some pictures of her warming up. So anyway, let's get back. Yeah. Let's get back to Michigan State. Head coach Robin Fralick, her first season at Michigan State. She had been the head coach at Bowling Green for 5 seasons, 88-73 there, 69-31 over the last 3. Robin Fralick is one of the up-and-comers in the women's game. Good. And I say young because she's younger than me, but she's, and speaking and coaching speak, young basically is anybody under 40, or even 45. But she's a talented, bright young coach, and who will, my opinion, will do a good job at Michigan State. And it's just, again, Michigan State and others are just, with the teams coming into the league, it's just going to get harder and harder to compete. So you got to have somebody who knows what they are and what their identity is. We talked a little bit about this yesterday at the meetup. By the way, kudos to all the people who were at the meetup and said hello to us yesterday. At least IU has an identity. The IU women have an identity. And she's starting to establish that for Michigan State, what their identity is. So their top 3 players: Maura Joyner, 5'10" graduate guard. She's averaging 15 points a game, which is 11th in the league, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 46% field goal shooter, 12th in the league, and 41% from deep. So she's 5th in the league there. So good shooter. And I didn't think to look back where she was, she averaged last year. She averaged 10.1 points per game and just around 5 rebounds. She missed a large part of her junior year with an injury. So she's one that, has gotten that extra time with COVID and the injury. Julia Allwright. Allwright's intriguing to me because she's a lot like the big girl from Ohio State, and actually maybe a little better offensively. Allwright's a 6'2" graduate. They list her as a guard, but if I'm, she's got some size, some strength to her. 15 a game, 13th. We'll say 7.5 rebounds is 6, 53% field goal, which is 4th, 76% at the line, 15. She averages 2.3 blocks a game, which is 2nd in the league. Last year, she was a 4-point a game, 2.5 rebounds. So she's made some big strides here. And now and again, this just shows you what a coaching change can do. She was probably, and under the old regime, which had probably recruited her, she just couldn't find her way onto the floor and for whatever reason. But here comes Robin Fralick. She's like, "You're my player," and she's like, "Okay, just I'm that," and what confidence can do. Dee Hageman, 5'7" junior guard, 13 a game, 22nd in the league. She's shooting 77% free throws, which is 14. She's just under 5 assists a game at 7th. Her assist to turnover ratio is 2.9. which is first in the league. She was honorable mention all Big Ten last year. And last year, again, is another example, was averaging, 9 points a game and 5 assists. So
yeah,
she is really, so they've thrived. And you also got to remember last year, Susie Merchant had a health issue. They basically finished up the last half of the Big Ten season with an interim coach, one of the staff that was there. So, I'm sure that played a little bit of it, but Robin Freilich has instilled at least offensive confidence in this group of kids.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing for me too. When I was, digging into a little more of the details for prepping today, those three in particular have really made some nice jumps in terms of what they were averaging last season. And two of them, Myra Joyner and Julia, both had injuries too, that they kind of came off of in the 21-22 season, both of them. So, really that really helped. But I think Julia Allright in particular, averaging last year 4 points per game and now up to 15, that's really quite a jump. And I think that what you're saying is really all right. It seems like maybe this coaching regime change has really put a new system into place for her to really fit and to thrive. And kudos to her too, because I'm sure she did a lot of off-season work to try to develop more and things like that. So why don't we jump into maybe some more more details here about some of the stats you pulled off of her hoops. So Indiana right now has a chance to win, according to her hoop stats, of 80%. And they project that to be an 80-69 victory. But do you want to kind of walk us through some of those numbers that you found, Jeff?
Yeah, you look on paper, these are two pretty similar teams. I use eighth going into today. I haven't checked it since the game's over, but going into today, IU was eighth on their rating. Michigan State was 22nd, very similar to kind of where they both are in the net. Offensive efficiency, IU's 10th, Michigan State's actually 5th. Defensive efficiency, IU 74th, Michigan State's 103rd. Effective field goal percentage, IU's 2nd, Michigan State's 10th. Points per play, IU's 3rd, Michigan State's 2nd. Rebound rate, though, this is where, again, I think if we can get into kind of a rebounding game, IU's rebound rate is 71st, Michigan State 103rd. Assist rate, both in the mid-30s, IU's 38th and Michigan State's 36th. So, again, you look on paper, Kathy, especially some of the analytical stats, I'm a little surprised again, home court plays a big role here, but
right.
There's a lot of similar stats there.
Yeah, absolutely. I was kind of surprised here looking through it as well. And I wasn't just even looking at the Big Ten stats and where we were compared to Michigan State. It seems pretty even. The one place that's interesting to me, I think we, probably play a little better defense most of the time than Michigan State. If you looked at some of where they're at in the conference in terms of what they allow, I think we're definitely a little bit better on that end of it. But, Michigan State can put up some numbers too. So we'll see what our defense can really do. For me, I think kind of the key to the game, we started alluding to it again, turnovers, especially after we saw today. I think that's something that's going to be a huge focus is kind of valuing that ball. I think that's going to be their rebounding, which we've talked about all year. And then I really would like to see our defense take a step up as too. So those are kind of my 3 keys to the game I'll be kind of watching for. But what about you, Jeff? What is some of the things you might be looking at?
I agree with those 3. I'm also going to be looking at shooting for 3-point shooting percentage. Can we defend the line, and can we hit, again, our percentage today wasn't bad, but we've gotten to the point with the women's team, we're a little bit more of a volume team. We're a little bit more of a 20 to 25, shot from deep. And we didn't get there today. So I'm going to be looking at 3-point shooting.
Yeah, absolutely. I do too. And this is a different Michigan State team than we saw last year for sure. And Michigan State beat us last year. Again, that was in East Lansing. This one's going to be at home, and that should definitely help. Hopefully we have a nice crowd on Thursday evening, but this is not a Michigan State team that you should take lightly or overlook, even at home. Like I mentioned, they did take Iowa and Ohio State both on the road for them. And they took them down to the wire and played them both really tough. So I would expect nothing less than having Michigan State come in and be the same way. So ultimately, I think we end up winning this, but I think it might end up being a little bit more of a rock fight than people might be expecting if they haven't been paying a whole lot of attention or watching much about Michigan State. But do you have any predictions on the game?
I think we're going to win. I predicted us to win this game in the preseason. I'm going to stick with that. I don't know if it's going to be 80-69. I'm kind of envisioning a little bit more of what Illinois was like when they came in on New Year's Eve. kind of like you said, rock fight. And can we get Penn State comes to mind a little bit. So we'll see. I don't like to predict scores. That's why I like getting it off the Her Hoop Stats site, where we can let them make a prediction. But, but we just got to play, and we got to be able to bounce back. And I'm sure that's going to be the message on as well tomorrow, on Tuesday, Wednesday is, look, again, lost in the league. You've kind of put yourself down at half game behind, a game behind there too. So you got to win. You got to win these games at home and get yourself in a position to play for a chance to share or win outright the league title.
Yep, absolutely. So, well, let's jump over to around the Big Ten, talk about a little bit of what happened yesterday on Saturday, and then some of the upcoming games people might want to kind of poke around and keep an eye on this week. So yesterday we had 3 Big Ten games. Iowa was at Maryland and won that 93-85. Although that score, Jeff, I don't know if you got to watch much of it. I was kind of able to glance at it when we were kind of out and about in Bloomington yesterday. But it was closer than that score would predict. I would have thought they were tied actually with only about 4 minutes left in that game. So it ended up being a little closer than what you might see with the score.
Yep.
Michigan went into Penn State and won that 80-75. But for me, I think the biggest surprise on Saturday, and probably you too, is Rutgers, who was winless in the conference, went into Nebraska and beat them 71-70 for their first Big Ten win. And if I was going to predict any kind of game, that was not even one we had on our radar to even keep an eye on when we kind of were putting this run sheet together. But any thoughts on either of those 3 games?
I'd give Michigan credit. We were talking here for the last couple of weeks, like Penn State was just the best, 4th best team in the league. And they were a team that you didn't want to play. And Michigan goes on the road to Happy Valley and steals one. So it's just really, once you get past the top 3, Kathy, and I'm glad we're part of that. It's right now, it's just kind of topsy-turvy. That loss by Nebraska, I don't think drops them out of bracketology, but I bet it cost them a line. I think they were a 9 this last week on Friday when Charlie Cream did it, and that probably will drop them to a 10. Right now, the league is only looking like a 6-team league. A lot of it will depend on how teams play down the stretch, obviously, especially Maryland. I think Minnesota losing Mara Braun is a huge loss and really going to doom any chance they have of making the tournament. But Maryland had basically dropped to basically the last team in. Now, again, it's an inexact science, but Cream, like our own Andy Bottoms and Brian Townsoni and Delphi Bracketology, they've gotten pretty good at this. So I would imagine that they may not be the last team in. They could be the first team out, or they're right in that, the last 4 in, but they're right there they're very solidly on the bubble right now. So, you're looking possibly only 6 teams getting into the tournament. So, we talk about this a little bit. You look at Tuesday, Nebraska at Michigan. You would think that Michigan will be the favorite, but then Michigan's been the team that at home be like, they just got beat by Illinois at home. So, and I know we got to look on Illinois Purdue here, but I'm not sure that game has as much importance as it might have had we been talking about that game middle, in the preseason. But again, another game to keep an eye on. Big game, in my opinion, Kathy, out your way on Thursday, pretty much the same time we're playing. Penn State at Iowa.
Yeah, I think so too. We'll be interested to be able to kind of keep an eye on that in between watching our team play. But that is an interesting one, I think, on paper too. Because again, I'm still surprised that Penn State lost at home to Michigan. So I would expect a bounce back for them, hopefully. And going into Iowa, as we all know, is never easy. But Penn State's at full strength now with Owusu back and Marisa back. And so I'm still really high on Penn State, even though they did just lose to Michigan. So but I think, like you mentioned, that, you get past those kind of top 3 teams. The middle of the Big Ten seems to really be bunching up and beating up on each other in particular. And you just never know which teams you're going to get day in and day out. You might get a really fantastic Michigan team one night, and the next time they get beat by 20 points. So I think that's what's kind of interesting with some of these other games going on. But that Penn State Iowa one is going to be, I hope, an interesting and a good outcome for us.
Well, and that's the thing. Penn State's got the firepower. Will they be able to defend well enough may be the question, but they've got the firepower to go with Iowa.
Yeah, I predict that's probably going to be a pretty high scoring game in that one. So, which is probably maybe a good time to kind of update people on the standing. So as of today, the Iowa and Ohio State are tied for first with 10-1. And this loss today did drop us into second at 9-2, or third, I guess, rather. And then Penn State's they're in fourth at 7-4. Michigan and State is at fifth at 6-4. And then Nebraska and Michigan are now tied at 6-5. So that loss for Nebraska really, kind of dropped them down there too. And, again, when you're really wanting to get into that top four to have that double bye in the Big Ten tournament, any home loss like that is really kind of unexpected, but it's really hurts your chances at being able to do that from here on out.
Yep.
Any other thoughts on the Big Ten as a whole, or do you want to give us your final thoughts for today?
Now I'll move on to final thoughts here, Kathy.
Yep.
And just again, it's not the end of the world. You still have your goals in front of you, which is winning the Big Ten. Now you have to have some help, because if Ohio State goes in and beats Iowa, then it really makes it tough, because I'm not sure Ohio State loses the game after that. If they don't lose in Iowa City, I'm not sure where they lose with that. And again, we said this at the beginning of the year, I especially felt like Ohio State was the best team in the league at the beginning of the season. I felt like with that. So that may play out, but any chance you have, you're going to need a little help, but your goals are still in front of you. You still got a chance to possibly share and get enough help, maybe win the league outright. You still have the Big Ten tournament in front of you. And again, you want to get as good a seed as possible. Then, that 2 or 3 seed, if you can't be the 1 seed, I'm not sure the 2 or 3. Actually, to me, the 2-3 seed is actually not a bad place to be, because you avoid that number 1 seed until the final. With that, so if you can't be the 1, then I don't mind the 2 or 3. The 4, sometimes you get that semifinal game with the number 1. With that, so you still have your goals in front of you, but just I think it was like you talked about, Kathy, kind of the manner of the loss, where we looked like we were in a roll, especially going into halftime. Then we come out third quarter and just act like we didn't know how to attack the press. And again, I think a lot of that's on the players. I can't imagine. I know Terry Moore took the coaching route of, I didn't have us prepared, but a lot of it, I said something, I didn't like the scheme, but players still got to execute, and they didn't execute.
Absolutely. Yeah. That third quarter was just too much of a hole that we dug for ourselves to get back out of, and too big of a mountain to overcome. So, to your point, we really have to just make sure we're holding serve at home here now. And we got that Iowa game coming up on the 22nd, which I know everyone has circled. But we can't look past some of these other teams coming in, because if we do that, we are going to trip. And then that's where you really take yourself out of the potential to, like you said, tie at a minimum for the conference lead. And Ohio State, they do still have to go up to Michigan State and up to Penn State on the road, both, which you never know what could happen with either of those 2 teams this year. And so I think for all of us listening, Thursday, we're going to be fans of 3 teams. We're going to be fans, of course, of Indiana. We're going to be fans of Penn State going into Iowa. And then if, Minnesota, even with any miracle, they have Ohio State coming in. So we'll be fans of Minnesota on Thursday night as well. Maybe they can pull the upset off with Ohio State coming in. So that's, for me, my final thoughts for today. And I think we'll hit some music and just kind of talk about what's coming up. So yeah, real quick on that. Thanks to Bob Thompson a little early. That was some music that he created for us. I was able to finally meet Bob in person on Friday night with the Back Home Network meetup that we had this weekend. So he was at the team dinner Friday night. So it was nice to meet Bob in person. So for us, we will be up next. We will be doing a show on Thursday after the Michigan State game. So I know Thursday night is normally when you would be listening to Assembly Call in their weekly radio show. But I talked to Jared this weekend, and he said, nope, this game against Michigan State is more important, and they're going to move Assembly Call so that we don't kind of correspond at the same time. So we will be going live right after that game. So again, as a reminder, that game is Thursday on Peacock. The tip time is 7 Eastern, 6 Central. So Jeff and I should be jumping on around 9 Eastern or 8 Central. Assembly Call Radio, like I mentioned, will be on sometime this week, potentially, or maybe they take a week off. But I think they have a men's game coming up that they'll be highlighting this week. But they might not have their normal radio show. So keep an eye on the Assembly Call Twitter feed. So most likely you will hear them Tuesday after the men's game. But I'm not sure if they'll do like a regular show or not. So they might move it to Wednesday. I'm not quite sure what Jared's decided. So anyway, keep an eye on Twitter or any of the other places if you're in Substack, and we'll keep you up to date on when it is. But if you do want to see the show live for Jeff and I and be part of our live chat, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@backhome-network. You can be part of our private community as well. Find out more at assemblycall.substack.com. Again, special thanks to John Ringer of Riggs Design for designing our logo and Bob Thompson for our music. But most of all, thank all of you for listening and being here today or listening after the fact. We really appreciate everything, and especially any of you that we got to meet yesterday at the meetup. It was really nice to have meet a lot of people. So really, really happy about that. So we will be back again talking hoops with you on Thursday evening. But until then, keep your elbows in, your eyes on the rim, and let's go Hoosiers. And cut.
Yeah, I hit the wrong music. But no, you talk about radio, Kathy. You did great. That's kind of a radio thing where you kind of get the little bump music into coming out of the timeout or into the intro. Yeah. And kind of talk right over it. You did great.
Yeah, I didn't mean to, but yeah, it turned
out
pretty good.
I hit it a little early, but I was just like, you know what? That actually sounded like we knew what we were doing.
Yes. And, yeah. And for anyone listening, the same thing, we play Iowa on a Thursday night as well, the 22nd. And so actually Jeff will be doing that show with Coach Marlow because my husband and I will be traveling, going to vacation. So I'll miss that game, but don't feel so too bad for me. I'll be in Cancun. So
I'll be with Coach Tonsoni. Jeff won't be with Coach Marlow.
Oh, no, you will be with yourself, but you'll also be with Coach Tonsoni. It's been a long weekend.
Yes. It has. Because I went down for the meetup yesterday and then came back last night. So it's been a long weekend. Absolutely. And the game wasn't much fun yesterday. But anyway, hey, by the way, just so people know, and I know they don't listen to necessarily our feed for the men's information, but the men play at Ohio State on Tuesday. That game, and the AC will be on. Assembly Call will have their post-game show after that. And then after beyond that, I know Thursday night we're going to be on after the women's game on Peacock. So so with that, so we're looking forward to that. And Kathy's going to duke out on me here. She's going to Cancun to get some sun.
Yes. So. It's been lacking here. Check local listings, but yes.
here in northern Indiana, sun's out today, so not too bad.
It is here too, as well, down in southern Indiana, where I'm actually here today. So, and with that, Jeff, I think I'm going to let you go. I'm going to go hang out with the family for a while, and I'll see you on Thursday and see everybody else. So thanks, everyone.
Talk to you on Thursday. See everybody, and I'll get this loaded up for everybody.
Yep.
See you, Kathy.
Bye-bye.